According to the National Education Association in 2014, 72% of 15,000 teachers nationwide face an unhealthy level of stress when standardized tests roll around. The same survey, conducted by WTHR on 2,000 Indiana teachers, showed 81% with the same reaction. Also from the NEA, the level of stress has made 45% of teachers consider quitting solely because of standardized tests, as well as creates a decrease in overall classroom health. This is why we, the affirmative, support the resolve that the IDOE should eliminate the use of standardized tests as an assessment tool. For the purpose of this debate, terms will be defined as follows by edglossary.org. Academic standards: the knowledge and skills that students are expected to learn in a subject in each grade. They are designed to provide a clear path for students to gain the proficiency that is required to learn increasingly complex material in the next grade. Standardized test: a test that 1. requires all test takers to answer the same questions, and 2. is scored in a standard or consistent manner, which makes it possible to compare the relative performance of individual students or groups of students. High-stakes testing: any test used to make important decisions about students, educators, schools, or districts, most commonly for the purpose of accountability. In general, high stakes means that test scores are used to determine punishments, accolades, advancement, or compensation. Currently in Indiana, there is ISTEP, or Indiana Statewide Testing for Educational Progress. Students take the ISTEP in English Language Arts and Mathematics every spring in grades 3 through 8. Students are also tested in science in grades 4 and 6 in social studies in grades 5 and 7. High school students take end-of-course assessments, or ECAs, in addition to some ISTEP testing. These tests are administered to students enrolled in English 10, Algebra 1, or Biology 1. Students have to pass the English and math tests in order to graduate. They are also subject to regularly scheduled tests in language arts and mathematics from freshman, sophomore, and in cases junior year. Our plan is as follows. Step 1, remove all use of standardized testing by Indiana schools. Step 2, decrease current testing budget by as much as half and allocate it to creating new standards for assessing students based on adherence to a course plan. Step 3, hire inspectors for the strict record keeping and maintenance of these lesson plans in accordance to the new standards. Our contentions for this case are as follows. Number 1, current funding. Number 2, class time. And number 3, degrading nature. I will now develop our first contention, current funding. According to educationweek.org in 2012, the state of Indiana pays upwards of $46.2 million a year on standardized tests. School tuition has increased yearly as a result. PBS in 2014 stated that only 4 multi-billion-dollar companies control the testing market, one of which, NCS Pearson, is the primary grader of these tests. This monopoly allows for the infinite increase of prices. All of these companies also offer additional practice materials for an additional cost, catering to those who can afford the extra practice. Based on studies on PBS also concluded that these materials do in fact increase the scores for most students. Fairtest.org in 2010 stated that tests with open-ended answers have to be graded by hired human graders. In this way, the status quo has monetary harms as the apparent improved tests continue to cost more and more. My opponent may claim that current tests are the best option for measuring the growth and learning of students, but as my partner will show, the margin of error in these tests is too large to be used on a student population with so much variation. Pressure to see only positive results on these tests creates a negative effect in the classroom and harms the education of Indiana's youth. It is for these reasons that we, the affirmative, support the resolve that the IDOE should eliminate the use of standardized tests as an assessment tool. I am now ready for cross-examination.
So you said in your plan you wanted to remove all standardized tests?
Yes.
Okay, so have you ever taken a Scantron?
Yes.
And have you ever written an essay for a test for a class? Okay, so wouldn't you say then that there is no teacher bias in a Scantron?
Yes.
Okay, so then how are you suggesting you make a new test without an essay part that's going to be based, so like you're replacing a test with a new test?
No, we are not. Our plan stated that we are we're hiring an administrator to determine standards, and then each school will be required to put forth lesson plans, and then we are also hiring inspectors that will go around and and assess that teachers are following the plans that they set forth prior to the school year.
Okay, so I know that one big thing you attacked was stress, but would you say that you trust your parents?
Yes.
Okay, would you say that parents know what's best for their children?
Yes.
Okay, so according to PBS in 2016, 93% of parents approve standardized testing. So wouldn't you agree that standardized tests then aren't negative?
Just because they approve it, when you say approve, do you mean like they agree for their student to take it?
Mm-hmm.
They agree or they support it?
What's the difference? There isn't a
well,
difference.
if you're agreeing, you're just saying I allow my student to take it, which means you don't necessarily know that there's an alternative to that, and you're just agreeing that okay, my student can take it.
No, the parents are saying that they support standardized testing. They think that the tests are good tests. So, you play soccer, don't you?
Yes.
So do you practice for soccer?
Yes.
So wouldn't you say every single time you practice, you get better?
Yes.
That's his timing.
Kelsey.
George W. Bush went back to his old high school in Texas and saw that standards for education were low. A quote from George W. Bush about his experience said, "We decided to do something about this. We accepted the responsibility of the office to which I had been elected. It starts with this concept: every child can learn. We believe that it's important to have a high-quality education if one is going to succeed in the 21st century. It is no longer acceptable to be cranking people out of the school system and saying, okay, just go. You know you can make a living through manual labor alone. This is going to happen for some, but it's not the future of America. If we want to be a competitive nation as we head into the 21st century, if we want to be as competitive heading into the 21st century, so we put into act the No Child Left Behind. And it's for these reasons that we, the negative, negate the resolve that the IDOE should eliminate the use of standardized testing as a testing tool. For the purpose of this debate, terms to be defined are as follows according to edglossary.org. Standardized testing. A test that is any form of test requires all test takers to answer the same questions or a selection of questions from a common bank of questions in the same way, and that is scored in a standard or consistent manner, which makes it possible to compare the relative performance of individuals, students, or groups of students. IDOE, Indiana Department of Education. The status quo is as follows. According to the IDOE, to comply with the federal No Child Left Behind Act of 2001, Indiana administers standardized tests to students beginning in 3rd through high school. In Indiana, students in 3rd through 8th grade take a standard-based test called Indiana Statewide Testing for Educational Progress Plus, or ISTEP Plus. Standards-based means the test items are based on grade-specific Indiana academic content standards. The ISTEP tests are administered to 3rd through 8th grade students in English, language arts, and math, 4th and 6th grade students in science, and 5th and 7th grade students in social studies. Our contentions for the debate are as follows. 1. Purpose. 1. Purpose. 2. Good test. 2. Good test. 3. Status quo is workable. 3. Status quo is workable. I will now develop our first contention. Purpose. According to an article in ed.week.org published April 10, 2015, the No Child Left Behind Act, which passed Congress with overwhelming bipartisan in 2001 and was signed into law by President George W. Bush on January 8, 2002, is the name for a recent update to the Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1965. The NLCP law, which grew out of concern that the American education system was no longer internationally competitive, significantly increased the federal role in holding schools responsible for the academic progress of all students. According to the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction, the major focus of the No Child Left Behind Act is to close student achievement gaps by providing all children with a fair, equal, and significant opportunity to obtain a high-quality education. The U.S. Department of Education emphasizes four pillars within the bill. Accountability, to ensure that those students who are disadvantaged achieve academic proficiency. Flexibility, allow students in schools, districts flexibility in how they use federal education funds to improve student achievement. Research-based education, emphasizes educational programs and practices that have been proven effective through scientific research. And parent options, increases the choices available to parents of the students attending Title I schools. According to IndianaPublicMedia.org, today all Indiana public schools receive a letter grade in accordance with the state's NCLB waiver. These letter grades are calculated from scores on standardized tests. Letter grades for elementary and middle schools come from students' performance on the ISTEP Plus. For high schools, the calculation is a little more complex. It comes from scores on ECAs, graduation rates, and college readiness assessments. These letter grades allow for the state to know where federal funding should be distributed, as well as being able to see which schools need help with their academics. My opponent may claim that some people are bad test takers, or that there are external factors such as a child's home environment that can harm a student's test scores. But as I stated before, standardized testing is made to be a fair and equal way for students of all backgrounds to be assessed. As I stated, the United States realized it was no longer academically competitive internationally, and putting the No Child Left Behind Act into place would allow for the U.S. to become competitive again. It is for these reasons that we, the negative, negate the resolve that the IDOE should eliminate this use of standardized testing as a testing tool. I am now ready for cross-examination.
Okay, so do you find it healthy to be stressed?
No.
Do you stress over standardized tests?
I don't.
So you don't care about your results?
I didn't say I don't care about them, I just said I don't stress.
Why do you not stress?
Because I go in knowing that it's a fair test and there's not going to be anything on there that I shouldn't know.
But have you heard other students that say that their scores don't matter?
Yeah.
So wouldn't students not caring about their tests read inaccurate results?
No.
How
I
could it
mean,
not?
Just because the student wouldn't by that.
So if a student goes into the test and they don't care what they're going to get on it, which, as you stated, you know people who do that, would that not create inaccurate results because students are not performing as well as they could?
I guess that's against their own student, but some people will go in knowing that this could help them in some ways, and you can't get everyone to care about a test. I mean, not everyone cares about tests in high school.
So the test isn't working.
I don't know the correlation between someone not caring and the test not working. The
Because-
test can show that people from different places different people are gonna have different opinions on whether it's working or not. But it's a way for maybe the government to see that student from all a group of students from that school is not caring, and then they can put more money into their academic funds that could maybe help them to want to learn more.
Thus increasing the tuition cost for students who have to pay for these tests. Because testing is part of tuition cost. So by increasing the amount of money that we would put into a test.
Well, the state of Indiana is given money for their testing. They are given $230 million each year for administering high-stakes standardized testing.
Thank you.
Martin Luther King Jr. once said, "The function of education is to teach one to think intensively and to think critically. Intelligence plus character. That is the goal of true education." Unfortunately, our current education system is not achieving this goal. It is instead preparing kids to take a series of standardized tests so the schools can continue to receive funding. This places unnecessary stress on not only the school itself, but on the students as well. It is for these reasons that we, the affirmative, support the resolve that the IDOE should eliminate the use of standardized testing as an assessment tool. I will now develop our second contention, class ties. According to a survey done by WTHR, given to all public school teachers in the state of Indiana, 77.8% said that they felt that standardized tests had a negative impact on how they taught in the classroom, and 80.2% said that this was because of a need to teach for the test alone. As our partner said earlier, the purpose of these tests is to generate money for school. It has nothing to do with measuring the intelligence of the individual child. This is where the real problem arises. Schools are not teaching kids important subject matter. It is simply teaching them to test well. They are teaching them useless facts to be regurgitated on tests so that schools can continue to receive funding. According to an article written in the Washington Post, schools can spend 60 to more than 110 hours on standardized testing. That is enough time to add 20 to 40 minutes of school time each day. Most of you will groan at extra school time, but this is extra time that can be used to teach valuable life lessons and important life skills, such as paying taxes or writing a check. I'll now develop our third contention, degrading nature. I-STEP testing begins around the 3rd grade. In the same survey done by WTHR, 57.4% of teachers disagreed that this test accurately measured student achievement, and 28.3% strongly disagreed. In an article written on greatschool.org, students felt worse about themselves if they performed poorly on these tests, whereas kids who did well felt better about themselves. Now, I'm not opposed to competition, but when it puts value in intelligence only, this is where a problem can come about. There are also the problems with students who are challenged, say with ADHD, ADD, kids who have tougher home environments. My opponent has claimed that this test is equal and fair for all students. However, if you gave a test to 4 people that said to climb a rock wall, and one of them happened to be a professional rock wall climber, wouldn't he be an advantage than the other 3? Our plan has solvency because it removes the test entirely, therefore the problem is removed itself. And my opponent's plan lacks inherency because even if the students do better on this test, then it still continues to put pressure and stress on them because they are now expected to achieve higher than other students. It's for these reasons that we, the affirmative, support the resolve that the IDO should eliminate the use of standardized testing as an assessment tool. I'm now ready for cross-examination.
So, would you say that $230 million is a pretty large sum of money?
I'd say so.
Did you know that, according to NESAR, there's $230 million worth of federal grants alone given to the state of Indiana when they administer high-stakes tests?
I did not know that.
So, possibly not giving any sort of test could take away from the schools who receive this funding to better help their students who maybe did score poorly on their I-STEPs or other standard testing.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
I said, if Indiana does not give their standardized tests, they don't receive the $230 million in funds each year. So, if you took away all tests, you wouldn't be receiving that. Couldn't that harm a student who goes to a school that could possibly need the academic funding that they receive from those $230 million?
Well, it could. However, because they're receiving this, then more pressure is put on them because schools only receive this if they do well on these tests.
The schools receive the $230 million no matter what.
Then your tests serve no purpose.
Well, the purpose of this test is to see where that money is going to go. That's the purpose of the test.
So more money is given to schools with lower tests, is that what you're saying?
To help them improve academically.
By giving them more tests.
Not by giving them more tests. They're still taking the same amount of tests. Okay. You said that the test is not fair because students who possibly have ADHD or other problems are disadvantaged, correct?
That is correct.
Did you know that there is something called the MSAT that is a modified version of state English, language arts, and math assessments administered to students who have special needs that interfere with the I-STEP?
I did not know that.
So there is a fair way for all students to be tested.
Is this common knowledge? Like, do all schools administer this special test?
Yes.
Benjamin Franklin in 1755 said, "An investment in knowledge pays the best interest." This is why we, the negative, negate the resolve. The IDOE should eliminate the use of standardized tests as a testing tool. I will now develop our second contention. good tests. As the second affirmative wrongly claimed, and people claim that with standardized testing, teachers teach to the tests. However, the topics tested are broad. To support this, I'll discuss the ISTEP standards according to the IDOE in 2016 versus the curriculum according to PBS in 2016 in 4th, 8th, and 10th grade. The curriculum for 4th grade math students includes equations with fractions and decimals and prime numbers. These are just 2 out of the 20 core topics taught to 4th graders. The standards for 4th grade ISTEP are problem solving and being able to display simple algebraic thinking. As I further researched into 8th and 10th grade ISTEP for math students, the standards for ISTEP focused on the broad topics, whereas the curriculum was much more specific, making it difficult to teach to what the test would say. In 8th grade, the standards of ISTEP focused on pre-algebra. The curriculum focused on perfecting mathematical skills, such as setting a basis for factoring and working with specific variables, just to name a few. For 10th grade, the standards for ISTEP focused on Algebra 1, including problem solving and word problems. The curriculum includes graphing, absolute values, and factoring, again, just to name a few. According to the Huffington Post in 2013, student growth is monitored by standardized tests, for although a student may score low, he may show a positive growth pattern. These tests are but one tool the teacher uses to diagnose her students' teaching needs, so an individual and child-centered curriculum can be developed. According to Huffington Post in 2013, a standard curriculum is important to grade level requirements, and it is an education reference point for fair and equitable education for all students in all schools, district by district and state by state. These standardized tests are unbiased. Since a computer handles the grading, there's no possible influence of the teacher on the exams. Our third contention is status quo is workable. According to the IDOE in 2016, in October 2008, the U.S. Department of Education added new regulations to the law, which include requiring schools to provide a uniform base for the tests and allowing parents to access school transfer or tutoring options for their children. According to Great Kids in 2016, the IMAST is a modified version of the ISTEP administered to students whose special needs interfere with the success on the ISTEP. For students with more severe disabilities, there's an alternative test called the I-STAR. This test is given to students who aren't physically able to take the test at an average level. At any time, a parent is able to deny their child for taking the test, regardless of the reason. The affirmative's plan of eliminating standardized tests is flawed, and their plan doesn't reach the advantages the status quo does. This affirmative plan lacks inherency because it eliminates the possibility to quantify the results of students across the state. With one standardized test, there will not be an equal, correct representation of the students within each area. The affirmative's plan has monetary harms. According to the IndyStar in 2016, as my partner previously stated, the state of Indiana receives $230 million per year for issuing standardized tests for students. Public schools heavily rely on this money. The affirmative's plan also has social harms. Although the students' performance on standardized tests cannot hurt the students, they offer insight into the strengths and weaknesses of the child's education. This acts as a testimony to what they actually know. It is for these reasons I, the negative, negate the resolve. The IDOE should eliminate the use of standardized tests as a testing tool. I'm now ready for cross-examination.
Do you enjoy competition?
Yeah.
Do you feel better about yourself when you win? Like you got first place in a race or something? Would you feel good?
Yeah.
Well, what if instead of praising your victory or win, what if instead we shamed the people who got last? Would that make you feel better about yourself?
Well, that's never done.
Yes, it is, actually. As a matter of fact, students who do poorly can often be expelled from schools due to the fact that the school itself wants to raise their test scores. Are you aware of that?
No, that doesn't, well, give me your source. That doesn't happen.
It was written about in the Washington Post,
When?
2014.
Well, that doesn't happen to schools. Like I previously said, parents, if they feel like their student got a low score, and they could get a higher score, the student can transfer or get tutoring options for these tests.
How much do these tutoring options cost?
They're offered for free.
No further questions.
No child left. Oh, okay, we're gonna go right now. The No Child Left Behind Act was put in place in order to create a fair and just system for students to be evaluated. The test grading system does not take into account the race, religion, gender, or area that a student lives in. It instead tests students on the information from the curriculum that is being taught during the school year. These standardized tests allow for students to be evaluated fairly, and the status quo currently has monetary benefits. An article from the Indiana Star wrote, the state of Indiana is given $230 million of government funds when they administer high-stakes standardized tests. Therefore, the affirmative plan has monetary harms. The affirmative plan included eliminating all high-stakes standardized testing and is not replacing it with any other form. And without that money, schools could possibly not be allowed the funding they need in order to improve their academic inefficiencies if these high-stakes tests are not given. Schools are also currently given letter grades based off their standardized test scores in order to keep track of school progress and to allow for families choosing a new school an easy way to access academic information. The affirmative plan would not allow for schools to be graded and therefore could lead to the state not knowing which schools are in need of funding and academic advising. My opponent claimed that these tests can be unfair for those students who are disadvantaged. But as my partner claimed, these tests the I-STAR can be given to students who are not physically able to take the I-STEP. The status quo allows for these students to have a fair way to be assessed like everyone else. The status quo has advantages that outweigh the disadvantages because this is a fair way for students to be tested and for schools to be given money. It is for these reasons that we, the negative, negate the resolve that the IDOE should eliminate this use of standardized tests as a testing tool. Please vote nay.
So based on our evidence, the status quo features physical harms to students and teachers in the form of unhealthy levels of stress caused by these standardized tests. This stress is detrimental to the health of teachers, students, and the classroom, ultimately leading to an infinite spiral of lower test scores as students perform poorer and poorer because the teaching in the classroom is poorer and poorer. And the status quo features monetary harms as a result of the test price increase from only 4 companies excessively increasing the prices and claiming that their tests are improved when they were. The status quo features monetary harms as the test prices increase excessively due to the monopoly of 4 companies and to the improved nature of the tests, which require human graders that have to be hired for an additional cost. And our plan offers benefits because the inspectors allow the inspectors which will be visiting schools take the place of the tests in determining which students and teachers are not receiving the proper education that they need and therefore can be cracked down on by the schools and improved. And it is for these reasons that we, the affirmative, support the resolve that the IDOE should eliminate the use of standardized tests as an assessment tool. Please vote affirmative.
The affirmatives plan is unrealistic and takes away the benefits of testing. The affirmatives plan supposedly offers a way to evaluate students by their teachers and also the inspectors of the school. It is human nature to have emotions, and these may affect the score of the child. Even the inspectors of these schools may be biased. Not only does it not offer the experience and knowledge to test, it eliminates a way to compare students from the same area. Standardized tests offer a baseline, a way to quantify the numbers between students. The affirmatives plan is to eliminate testing altogether. This will reduce funding significantly by $230 million according to IndyStar in 2016 and does not offer a realistic way to evaluate students, teachers, and schools. The affirmatives plan also focused on stress. However, as I previously stated, according to PBS in 2016, 93% of parents support standardized tests, thinking that they're positive. The affirmative also said that students continually perform poor, although this is a fallacy. There's no evidence to support that fact. The status quo, on the other hand, is beneficial for several reasons. As we previously stated, standardized tests offer a way to compare schools. The schools do not perform the schools that do not perform as well consistently can have an alteration in staff. Standardized tests cannot hurt the student. If a student failed a standardized test, they're able to retake each year until they pass. Students with learning disabilities are able to have extended time on the test, or a difference in test. The advantages of the status quo outweigh the disadvantages. Standardized tests allow for a baseline for schools. Without these standardized tests, students' evaluations are biased and are even affected by the school-specific grading scale. For example, Cathedral's lowest A is a 93. However, Hamilton Southeastern's lowest A is a 90. The affirmatives plan lacks solvency because, as I previously stated, the status quo is fixing itself. The No Child Left Behind Act has been significantly modified with tests for students with disabilities such as the IMAS and the ISTAR. With this act, parents have the ability to opt out of their children being tested regardless of the reason. And it's for these reasons, the negative, negate the resolve. The IDOE should eliminate the use of standardized tests as a testing tool. Please vote negative.
My opponent has constantly talked about quantifiable data. However, I do not believe that it is possible to quantify every single person in Indiana, every single student at least, because humans themselves are, by nature, not necessarily easily quantified. People come from different walks of life. They're different races, different cultures, but they are all given the exact same test. What about the ones that are different, but you can't see? The kids who have never been diagnosed with ADHD, ADD. They will receive the same test as the others, and no one will know. And they will do worse, and they will suffer because of it. There are harms to the negatives plan because, as they just stated, teachers can be fired if the scores aren't well enough. Teachers can be removed from their jobs. That is a lot of stress to put on one person because that is a lot of stress that is put on one person. Your job is writing on the scores of students. It is for these reasons that we, the affirmative, support the resolve that the IDO should eliminate the use of standardized testing as an assessment tool. Please vote affirmative.